For this scenario, I used ChatGPT itself to create the prompt and scenario, and I insert a range of specifications in order to do that, specifically wanting it to create a detailed fact pattern related to an area of copyright law, specifically idea versus expression dichotomy and merger doctrines. And I attached a PDF to ground it in the specific areas of the law that were necessary for it to cover in order to perform well, and asked it to have follow-up questions in order to not come to too quick conclusions. And then I gave it the actual evaluation criteria and told it why I was doing this, just so it had context. And there were some problems with the first output it gave me, because it essentially just gave it the answers by telling it which areas of the doctrine to look at, what follow-up questions to ask, and then what the evaluation criteria were. Just I'm giving it the answers. And then the fact pattern itself was pretty bare bones, didn't have enough detail the way I wanted it. So made some revisions, and it gave me this nice detailed message saying that you are a lawyer meeting a new client for the first time, and below is the client's full description of their situations. After reading, ask any follow-up questions you think are necessary to fully understand the situation before providing your written and legal analysis and advice. You may ask up to 5 rounds of questions before giving your final assessment. And again, that's just to kind of like cut down on those questions. And so it gave me this super interesting scenario about a client who created a video game, with all these different rules and specifications in it. And then a big gaming company essentially recreated it like a month later, and they want to know if they can recover any damages or what they can do. So I then input all of that into a control model, which is regular ChatGPT 5, and it gave me this nice long response, giving an overview covering two of the major areas of the doctrine, which is Section 102B and Baker versus Selden, which is good. However, for the rest of it, it doesn't really reconnect those areas of the law to our facts. It just kind of analyzes it, which is, again, if that was a law school exam, you'd get essentially no points in that section of their analysis. And then it gives some practical recommendations, and it's definitely useful, but not nearly as good as the experimental model, which provided a lot more case citations, really unpacked the facts. Its summary was much more useful. Its follow-up questions were even more detailed. And then this was like one of the things that it did that was most useful, is it created this long segment of all the rules and then attached all of those rules to specific citations of cases and parts of the Copyright Act. And this explanation was really good because it kind of gave kind of a 1,000-foot view of what was happening and all these practical steps that were super useful, and arguments for and against us. And so like what the other party will say. Then the last thing that I did was create a transcript off of the experimental model scenario and the control model scenario, and then drop them into the same folder I used to create the initial prompt. And it gave me a detailed breakdown comparing the two and scoring the two based off of our specific criteria, definition, and scale that we gave it. And so, first of all, with factual accuracy, the experimental model was better because it dove into more detail. Grounded in authority, the experimental model was significantly better. I thought the spread between the two should have been even more. I thought the control model actually probably should have been a 2 or a 3, so it should have been a much bigger difference, because the experimental model used a ton more citations and connected the facts to the actual law. And then clarity and tone, it actually gave the control model a better score, but I think that's because we specified it as wanting it to be a client-facing response rather than for like another attorney with a ton of different citations. So that's maybe an error on our end. And then as far as adaptability, it also said that the experimental model was better, for a total aggregate score of 17.7 out of 20 for the control, and then 18.8 out of 20 for the experimental. And when I did this analysis on my own, I actually got like very similar scores. So I think it's totally fair analysis.